everyone to the Autonomy Summer School Podcast. It's obviously not summer school, but we're still working with students and graduates, and I'm going to still make podcasts. So we're coming in right before the new year rings out, and I got a really special guest. I was lucky to meet someone in a situation, and we just had similar ideas, and we were bouncing things off each other. And he said, you really might dig my son. And he started telling me about his son and the journey he was on. And it really took me by surprise. After I think two or three meetings, I gave up my contact information. I said, ask your son if he's willing to talk to me about this. And he is. And I'm really glad because you guys get to meet him. His name is Nate Morrissey. And I'm just going to introduce him. Nate, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks for having me, brother. I'm glad I could be here.
Cool. Before we go too far, I'd like to ask how old you are.
I'm 23 years old.
23 years young. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the main reasons this stood out to me when I heard about your journey. And that's kind of what I wanted you to come on and talk about is how you got to where you are today, the decisions you made that turned corners and maybe boosted or held you back. I think that viewers and listeners might find benefit from your journey and from mine. And as we cross-pollinate and germinate these ideas, people are changing and affected for the better. So why don't you start off a little bit with, like most people, you finish up high school, you're going to go into the working field or college. What did you decide to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I finished high school, right? And originally I thought, the way to get the lifestyle I wanted was obtaining a high paying job. So I went to the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee to become a doctor. Mm-hmm. And I went to school for about 3 years. And going into my junior years when I really, it became kind of a turbulent time for me, I started to understand the lack of value that a college degree would bring me. And it scared me. Because, college is expensive, right? And when you're going to get this piece of paper that really to me meant nothing, you begin to question everything, right? Like, this is what I went to school for X amount of years for, to get this piece of paper. And for some reason, it's just not what I want. Like, I could, visualize getting that, degree, and it just didn't mean anything really to me. And that's kind of when I questioned it all. And I was like originally working in a factory that summer. And that was, solely to help make money, to fund, school for next year, living expenses, the whole nine. And I remember reading this book. You probably read it yourself, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's a great book, right? It was my first kind of read in that genre. And I'm reading the book. I finish it up. I read it in like 2 days. And I call one of my friends who now works out with me in California. And I call him and I'm like, dude, I think I'm dropping out of school. And he's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, dude, I feel great, but I'm just dropping out of school. And he's like, okay. I'm like, yeah. I was like, there's got to be another way. And honestly, it really looking back, it was one of the decisions that got me to where I am today. But after making that decision and like realizing, hey, there's no turning back, your whole life changes. Like it becomes, not like I need to do this. It's like, I have to. There's literally no other option. Like I knew I couldn't live in that setting in the factory. It wasn't for me. So that's when I started like scrambling for options, and sales became really apparent to me as a clear field to not only earn the income I want, but the freedom. Right. Mm-hmm. So originally it was insurance, and then it jumped to real estate. And then it became apparent that, literally the day I got my real estate license, one of my friends told me about the solar opportunity. And then when I heard about that, solar sales, high ticket closing and that stuff, literally the day after I got my real estate license, it became obsolete and I moved out to California. And then that kind of got me to where I am now.
That's a pretty fast journey.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
So can I ask at the factory, what you're probably making between 15 and 20 bucks an hour?
Yeah. So I was doing like 17. It was time and a half on Sundays, right? So I would work every single Sunday because it's the same day, same amount of time in the day. I just get paid more. So I'd be more effective, and I work Sundays too.
So from the gate, you had a high energy, a high drive.
Yeah, but because for me, motivation is always one of those things that like comes and goes. Like the best way I can describe it is motivation. You're like a candle, right? A gust of wind comes along, you blow out, you have to, watch those videos or do whatever it takes for that candle to light again. For me, drive's eternal. It's like a raging hot fire. You can dump water on a raging hot fire and those coals are still burning. It just needs a log, right? So I try and focus way more on drive and way less on motivation.
So you're switching off motivation and onto drive. I've never heard anyone talk about that in particular.
It's interesting. Interesting.
That's something to focus on. Well, I don't want to get too far away from a couple more questions about your college experience. When we spoke earlier, you talked about your professor and what he was driving, and that spoke to you. Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah. So for me, I've always enjoyed cars, right? I've always loved them. I've had, dream cars ever since I was young. And I remember, especially in college, right? You think these guys are making Ubers and Uber amount of money, right? And I remember seeing the professor parking, and this guy's driving a Corolla. I'm like, well, dude, what the hell? If this is what it's like to, this is what it takes to get a Corolla, I don't want it. And that was kind of like a big thing for me when I saw that. I was like, dude, if it takes 10 years of schooling to get to this point, like there's got to be a quicker route. And that's when I explored, other options outside of that.
So on your journey to, as you said, insurance, real estate, and then solar power, was there any other side courses you did or like self-help things, or was it just all experience and trial and error?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because for me, the one thing I've learned is like the best way to gain knowledge is by just trying, whether it be failing or succeeding. Like that's the best way. It's practical, right? So for me, it was, I guess the first thing I was really doing outside of work was like trying to learn sales passively. And I know since you're into crypto, you'll understand this. You remember when there was the computer market was scorching hot. You remember that? Because
like processors, people were shopping processors.
Exactly. So, it was graphic processing units. So what I did is I had a friend, his name's Nick. He helped me build my first computer. And I realized that, some of these people were unaware of how much these computers could go for. So what I would do is go on Facebook Marketplace, buy the computers and just resell them. And I was consistently reselling them. And it was like a side hustle I would do. And that's when I kind of realized like, hey, this is like freedom, right? Like I don't have a boss. I don't have to clock in at, 5:17 a.m. anymore. I can work on my own time. And the amount of income I can make's really up to me. So that was the first time I really got a taste of that like freedom that sales brings.
You really got a taste of your own time as value, as opposed to giving up your time to a servant who says, when you show up here for this window, I'll give you this much money. You realize you spend 1 hour at home, you make all that money.
Yeah, of course. And that changed the way I saw everything right there.
To look at your life as your own and your time as your asset.
Yeah.
And like you said, to focus on not motivation, but drive. I want to write that down. So was there anything that held you back when you first got started that almost made you feel like you were going to give up and go back to college?
Yeah. So that's a great question, right? The biggest thing, and we talked about this before, has always been mindset, right? It was self-belief. Because originally when I made the switch to drop out of school and just pursue something different, like you hear the craziest things from people, like suddenly people who may be your friends just question you. And it's kind of concerning because like that's your environment and you're questioning you, like your strongest belief system is questioning you and makes you question yourself. So, hearing things, like, oh, your parents know what you're doing. You're like, well, I think they do. Yeah. They didn't take it too bad. They didn't take it too well. But like, I would say the biggest thing I struggled with was self-belief. And I think a lot of people do. It's the hardest thing in life because the only limitations you have are the ones you place on yourself, at least in the 1099 world.
Say that one more time.
So the only limitations you have in this world are the ones you place on yourself. And there's stipulations on that. It's not the same in W-2 as it is in 1099. It's a bit different.
I think that's powerful. We talked about that earlier, is people don't even consider 1099. They hear someone taking a job like that and they go, oh, are you sure? What about da-da-da-da-da? It's like, you're just taking ownership of yourself. You're not farming yourself out. And it's a massive mindset change. Was there anything that influenced you? Was there anything that influenced you to make that change? Or was it just when you're in college, you just had this thing, a book, a person, something like tip you off in the right direction?
See, I think the turning point for me was definitely the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That book
That
really
was
did.
a great book. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it was a combination of things, right? Because that more so just like realized, hey, there's option B, right? But honestly, even knowing my parents, like there's always been some part of me that knew I wanted to go off, into a different direction. Like that's always been a part of me. I viewed money differently from most people, different from my parents. I viewed, lifestyle as being a different thing. And the only way to acquire those things was higher income. And that's literally why I went to school to become a doctor, because I thought like the W-2 route was the way to get it.
So when you left college after 3 years in college, I imagine you probably was carrying a little bit of debt baggage behind you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We had a little bit of debt. So that was one thing, I had to work on. That was like my primary focus. And I didn't even know I had debt until I applied for a credit card. Oh. And I got denied. Yeah. I applied for, I believe it was an Apple Card. I get denied. They send me it back. And it was like, consumer debt's too high. And I look and it's 60,000. And I remember I like run downstairs, ask my mom, like, Mom, what the hell is this? She's like, oh, it's college debt. I'm like, oh, wow.
It's a house, son.
Yeah. So I had to work on that. And, it was good because you pay for mistakes, right? It holds you accountable. Like that's the biggest thing. That's why, paying for my own college was one of the best things I think my parents could have done, hands down.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. So now here you are, right? You've had these transitions, like you've achieved some success. Are you willing to share at all how successful you've been the past 2 years?
In terms of what?
Well, I mean, was there any milestones you wanted to cross and you crossed them? Like you set a target and you reached it?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think a big one for me was because when I set out, like I told my mom, I remember when I dropped out of school, I was like, I'm going to make over 80 grand. Like hitting that was cool. I set like a personal income goal to make 200 grand. I passed that, which was cool. But I think it's weird because the way I view it, I'm a different person than I was last year, right? Like I'm constantly trying to bury my old self and become better every day. And the interesting thing about that, ideology is that person I was last year can catch up to me at any point. Like I can take, the wrong step backwards, that person catches up. I could be right in the same spot I was, last year. Wow. So I think milestones they're important. I think your goals they should scare the shit out of you because then you realize you have to put an abundance of work to get it. Like I went from $17 an hour to setting an income goal of 200,000. To most people that is considered insanity. But to me, it even sounded insane at the time. But just believing in it, realizing what's necessary to get there and constructing a plan, it's really not that hard after looking back. It's really not. If you come up with a plan, you're turning, a dream into a goal that has a plan versus if you don't have the plan, it's a wish. It's not going to happen because you just want it to. And that's the mistake I see like so many people having, especially in my generation, is they want shit to happen and it's not that's not how the world works. You have to give something up to receive.
Do you feel like people from your generation aren't equipped with that knowledge in high school?
I mean, I think, yeah, it's definitely something with, the school's not like being aware because you can't blame them, right? Because I don't think they're necessarily aware that, hey, there's other options. Like not everyone in this classroom wants to go to school to be a nurse. Like, I feel like that's one thing there's this huge misconception about, but you need to be aware of both options. Otherwise, you're not doing the kids justice because they paint this picture. At least I felt that if you don't go to school, you're a failure. And it was like this horrifying thing. Because when you think of college dropout, what comes to mind, right?
The owner of Virgin Records. The owner of,
See, but that's because you get it. That's because you get it, though, right? But to people who don't, it's more so like, oh, a failure dude who smokes weed, lives in his parents' basement, and that's the stigma behind it. Exactly,
and that's why stigma. Yeah,
exactly. Things need to be changed there, definitely.
So, do you have a desire to work towards making change there?
100%. Like I know for me, what I really want to do, and I don't know if it's going to be within my 20s, preferably. More so in my 30s, I really want to get to the point where it's strictly educational and leadership based to the point, where I can talk to kids. I want to start it sooner, but in terms of full time, more so maybe closer to 30. But I mean, for me, I know I talked to you about this. I really want to start like launching content, providing, hey, this is option B and this is what it brings you. Cause it's not for everyone.
Yep.
Like, I'm sure you're aware of that, is this path isn't for everyone. It comes with insane amount of stress, trials, tribulations that most people can't go through. Like, there's a reason why you're in the top 1% of earners, because you do what the 99% of people don't. It's a different path and it's not for everyone. So one thing I want to do in the educational space is definitely start, launching content, just kind of raising awareness about it going into the new year.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about that because, I'm a media creator and I work with a team of media creators and content writers, copywriters, all types of jazz. I mean, I'm coming to you as a student of Autonomy, a course that sounds exactly like what happened in your life. That's that is what's taught at Autonomy. And everything that you talk about on your journey, all these pinpoints and the things you came to realization on are things that are brought up in the course, especially this neglected aspect in public schooling, this part that's left out, this plan B, this other option, this other way to life. And the cultural stigma on top of that, where, like you said, if someone's a high school dropout or college dropout, they carry this negative mark above their head. And people don't realize some of the most important people in history have been high school dropouts and college dropouts, and or people that came from times that didn't have high schools and colleges. Ironically, there was once that time, and people came through that and invented amazing things. So anywho, we've covered a lot of territory here. Don't grind in silence. You'll be destroyed by when we talked before, you mentioned how important it was to put yourself in a situation with a team, to not try to go and do things on your own. Will you speak to that idea?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things I've ever learned, because originally I thought, the path to success was like the lone wolf, the lone survivor, the dude who climbs the mountain solo, and it's not. It shouldn't be, because when you go that route, like, who's your mentor? Who's your accountability partner? And like, if you have an ego, you'll say, hey, I don't need them. You do. Because I promise you, if the team that I'm surrounded with, that select core group of guys, were to go against one person, we'd destroy them night and day. We beat the hell out of them. And the problem is because you have four minds combined into one. It will always be more powerful. I have a person, Preston, for instance, he's one of my best friends. He is a stoic. He thinks with only logic, no emotion. He's an incredible guy. I have my other best friend, Ryan Tessner. He's absolutely incredible. He's the best leader I've ever met my entire life. Like, he's a dude I can look at and say, I would go to war for. And then I have, my other partner, Troy, who is probably the highest IQ person I know, super analytical. And when you combine all of those together, iron sharpens iron, right? It brings in everything. Because to me, when I first started, I was like hands down the dumbest person in that room, hands down, but it made me better. And I knew, hey, these guys are the top 3 producers right now. And what we do, I need to be around them. It's all of attraction, right? It's just being a product of your environment. And it made me, honestly, who I am today, was being around them. It made me so much better, so much quicker as well. It expedites everything.
I know exactly what you're talking about when you say iron sharpens iron. Being in an environment where you're looking up to people and they're setting a high standard and you're able to look and mimic what they're doing. And then you that rubs off on you. And when you look back, you don't even realize it, because it's like a natural transference. Your interaction with their interaction combined, people are affected for the better. But there's friction involved. I'm glad that you mentioned there's friction involved. This isn't an easy process. And like you said earlier, it's not for everyone. And it's really good to, if you can present an offer, it's really good to use a tool that might funnel or feed things out. It's called a qualifying lead. Have you heard of a qualifying lead magnet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you're familiar with these ideas. But it's a great way to like present your offer out there. And then on the way in, people go, man, I'm not going to take a 15-minute test, like, my income can be up 100 times. Well, maybe that 15 minutes is worth it. Like, that's where some people might weigh that cross balance. No, I'm kind of on the freestyle now. Almost all my questions have ran up, but I am curious, when you crossed over into the solar area from real estate, you said that was like right when you got your real estate license?
Literally the day after.
And
the day after.
At that time, there was a solar opportunity that came your way?
Yeah, because for me, it was I don't know. The best way I can look at it is there's always been this equation, and I learned it, right in that junior year of college, where time is in exchange for money, and that transaction goes both ways, right? So to me, it was all about the vehicle. For instance, I had an interview at a real estate broker here in town. And I remember the guy who was interviewing me, he's like, yeah, we had, someone similar in your age make 100 and some thousand. And he was the top earner in his age group in the state. And I was like, dude, well, 100,000. Like, I'm making 17,000 a year at this point. He said 100,000. I was like, okay, like, all right. And then I remember when I heard about the solar opportunity, the first thing I asked, I was like, what does the top earner in the company make? Okay, 1.2 million.
Dang.
That made my decision right there, right? Because that's all I needed to know is it's all about your ceiling. That's the biggest thing. It's all about the vehicle you're in. How high is your ceiling? People don't understand in W-2, your ceiling is literally fixed. It's fixed. They tell you, you can only work X amount for X amount an hour. You can't change that. Like, for instance, in sales, there is literally no limit to the amount of income I can make. If I were to decide, hey, I want to make $5 million next year, the only person who could stop me from doing that is myself. No one else. That is the difference. And that people don't like that. People don't like that. People take security when they can. They always will. That's just how the masses roll.
What do you think are the 3 most common ways people stop themselves?
I would say their mindset's atrocious, right? Their mindset shit. It's usually their biggest weakness, to winners and people who are on their way to riches and then turn them wealthy. It's their biggest tool, right? I would say the second thing would probably be accountability. I think accountability is huge and it's severely overlooked, right? Because people will be in a shit situation and they'll blame everyone else but themselves. People don't realize the problem's not out the window, it's in the mirror, right? And then I would say the third one would just be your habits. Habits are everything. They're needle movers.
And there's a great poem about habit. I've shared it in my community. I'm not sure if you've heard it, but it's if I was trying to freestyle it off my head, it's like, I'm the greatest master. I'm the worst slave. Whatever you teach me to do, I'll learn it quickly. I'll run you to ruin. I'll run you to riches. I'm yours. Use me. I'm habit. It's like a super long poem, but it's like all these very things that destroy people's lives. And at the same time, lift people out of the mire and put them on gigantic gold pedestals.
Yeah. Habits are everything. They always will be. Always will be. Like, honestly, if you put me in a room with, like, if I live with the guy for a month, I can tell you how well that guy's going to do just based off his day to day. Like, he gets up late. He's not going to be here for a long time. Like, he's staying out late. He's drinking. He's partying. He's not going to be here for a long time. Like, you can tell because people aren't willing to sacrifice the necessary things to get what they want.
In an exchange, right? An exchange of value.
Exactly. It's always a trade. It always will be. There's no such thing in this world as something for nothing. That is something my dad literally pounded into my head ever since I was a kid. And it's one thing that's always stuck with me. It always will. Always will.
Do you think that thought is commonly held among the youth today?
I think there's a massive problem with, like, all this free stuff. I think the stimulus was like another one of those things, like free money, something for nothing. And it's just bad. I think it really destroys them. It destroys work ethic. Like, I really don't think that, cause right now there's such a big problem with people, not being satisfied, not being fulfilled, not being happy. And people don't understand that, like, sometimes those are things you need to sacrifice to get what you want later. It's delayed gratification. It doesn't happen overnight. So many people look for microwavable success. It doesn't exist. They search for, a week and then they give up. And it's like, no shit, dude. You couldn't succeed if you wanted to. You're giving up so early. People often just underestimate what they can do in a year and overestimate what they can do in a week.
Wow. You're just dropping these crazy memes on me. I just, like, in my mind had this, like, meme idea for microwavable success. Like 2 boxes. A guy's got, like, a bag of popcorn. He goes to the microwave. It says success in the bag and he sticks in the microwave. The next frame is he pulls it out and he opens it up and it's like a W-2 form.
Yeah, it's true.
There's your ceiling. Yeah, there's your ceiling. That's what you're talking about. I don't think anyone ever said that to me before. That, your choice in W-2 is your choice of your ceiling. That's a pretty substantial way to view life. when it's like what everyone does all around us, except for all the business owners all around us where we shop. In my area, like gluten-free bakery, that's a small business owner. All the little dog grooming spots. Actually, during the lockdown in my city of Wisconsin, this one woman opened up a dog grooming depot. She's a small business owner. And she said, you know what, if you pull up to the door, I'll take your dog at the door and I'll groom your dog and you just pay me digitally. And she actually was like arrested and shut down. And it was just a at the door transaction, but it made national news. And then all the charges were dropped, obviously, because there was no charges. It was not an actual ordinance. People were getting Uber. People were getting Uber delivered, right? Why can't you get your dog dropped off in the same form? But it shows that that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive that you talk about, that motivation that's just within. And the people I know it in the most are business owners. They're the most inspiring people around me, is the small business owners or medium and large size business owners that I've come to know. And I wish I would have met and thought like these people earlier. So to that idea, let's say a young person is watching this, someone who's may even be in college or may even be a junior, senior in high school, thinking about, I want to be successful when I'm 23. What are a couple of things you might speak to them about that might actually bounce around in their head for a month and set them on the right path?
I would say first, like understanding that transaction I talked about. For me, it took what I hate to realize what I love. And I think like setting down the right path, first and foremost, be around the right people. That's like a non-negotiable. You need to be around the right people. Secondly, do the things you're supposed to do, right? Like just become better every single day. And I promise you that will attract good things in your life. Like, start going to the gym habitually, right? Don't eat like shit. Right. Don't go to bed at 3. Don't play video games for 12 hours. Like set up, a strategy, a plan that's going to make you better and you will attract better things. And one of the most important things that I would say is reach out. It's crazy to me because the way I found, for instance, the opportunity I did in sales is by reaching out. Like I DM'd a guy. I was like, hey, this sounds incredible. Let's do it. Let's hop on a call. Like everyone's able to do that. Everyone, at least I hope everyone has that phone where they can download Instagram, they can DM you, they can DM me, anything like that. And just realize, because like just by you taking that step, you're ahead of 99% of other people. Oh, I don't want to DM them. I don't want to do this. It's taking the first step. And then you get momentum. And then it's like, okay, what do I need to do? Is this the right fit for me? Like stuff like that. You learn way more about yourself. I would say just take control of your life. It's the biggest thing, because like when we were talking about W-2, like the ceiling of what you can make, that's a scary thought, right? What about where you have to go to work? You don't even have location freedom. You don't have time freedom. You have to work 9 to 5 every single day. And then you go to bed, you do the same thing tomorrow. You definitely don't have freedom of money. Like all of your money that's saved has stipulations on it. You can't pull it out till you retire at age, 60, 65. All that shit has stipulations. Versus with this, you don't have any of that. Like your money, it's in your account, it's yours. And then you give some to the tax man. Like that's it. The amount of money you make is entirely up to you. Dude. The plays you make with your money is entirely up to you. For most people, they don't understand that, that 18-year-old or whatever, however he may be, even if he's my age, he's either going to spend the next 40 years of his life working for someone else in exchange the most valued years of his life for a little bit of freedom at the end, or he's going to put in the absolute utmost time, work, and dedication into his craft to get freedom for the rest of his life. That's you got to pick which one you want.
Yeah. And
it's up to them. They got to figure that out.
Now you put it really nicely. And I hope that this gets to the right ears and is a better life than carrying around a college debt. And then, I mean, personally, I know some friends where it's just too much. It's too much for the rest of their life.
That's a trap.
So you mentioned financial freedom.
Yeah.
And we've been talking a whole lot of business. What do you do for fun? You golf, play music? What do you like to do?
So for me, when I have like 2 modes, right? When I'm working. Like there's no in between, right? Like we're working 7 days a week. I'm dedicated. I'm always looking for ways to produce more. And then it's like when I have fun, right? So for instance, I like to travel. I spent, part of this month in Europe. That was amazing. I love that. But I mean, for fun, I would say it's weird. It's weird. Like I like the beach, right? I like just being around my team. I love traveling, going on holiday. That's when like, you know, I'll more so let loose. But I think fun for me, as strange as it sounds, it's in the journey. It really is. Like it's in the journey. It's becoming, you know, better every day, getting to where you want to be. That's where true fun is. It's in the journey. It's all in the journey.
That's a really neat way of viewing it too. That emergence where, as opposed to everyone's like hit the time clock and then they separate into that separate self. Now I'm my home self. Now I'm in my office self. And they want that personality disorder may arise in that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And
I was
everything.
I was actually speaking towards like a hobby your dad had mentioned to me that you had got into recently in regard to timekeeping. And I found that really fascinating from my end, because it wasn't too long ago. I was listening to a really famous historian and instructor named John Taylor Gatto. He's like the inspiration and mentor to the instructor Richard Grove in the course I took. And John Taylor Gatto was talking about this company Rolex and how they had this shortage of people who fixed and repaired their watches. And so what they were doing at that time, I believe this was over a decade or even two ago, but at that time they were offering apprenticeships, people to just come and learn the skill of working on Rolex watches. And in return of signing up for the apprenticeship and completing the apprenticeship, Rolex would give that person the toolkit, which was at that time valued at $70,000. And John Taylor Gatto was sharing this, like, can you believe this? Like, we're at a time where that type of craft used to have a line of people lined up, waiting to get in. There was a line. And now, not only that type of trade, but even simple things like HVAC and construction and plumbing and electricians, these are all wide open spaces that are apprenticed in. Now, granted, those also maybe do a W-2 lower ceiling, but for those who aren't motivated or skill set to fit in with something like business ownership or sales, those areas are also withheld, you know, in the public school setting. And so it just feels like John Taylor Gatto was sharing this, like people need to adjust their mindset and to think about pursuing apprenticeships, and that, so that stuck with me a little bit. I'm not sure if you want to share about your activities with timekeeping.
As far as like timekeeping goes, I mean, you made up a good point with like the whole watch game. It's one thing I got into this year because to me, I always, it's strange. Like when I would see someone with a nice watch, I'd be like, dude, why does this conceited douchebag need a $30,000 watch to tell him the time? Right? Like that's how I viewed it. And I never understood that, you know, as long as luxury watches, if you get the right brand, they're an investment. And to me, I invest in what I love. Like to me, the stock market, it's so boring. I just don't like it. And that's okay. Like, you know what I mean? It may kill me. It may bite me in the ass, but hey, that's my decision. Right. So instead of like having 20,000 in my bank account, I could just buy a $20,000 watch that's outperformed the stock market in the past couple of years. And also too, it is a great conversation starter. Like I will say, like when you're around money and they're like, oh dude, like, what is that? And you talk to them about it. And then you ask them what their piece is. What do? They do this. Like you immediately form a relationship you wouldn't have formed before. So a big hobby, yeah, that I've gotten into, I definitely have plans for it for next year is, you know, luxury watches. I love them. They're gorgeous. And the investment side of them is beautiful too, because they're very liquid. The watch market it's very, very liquid, especially if you know the right people.
Yeah. People talk gold and silver and platinum all the time.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother level from, you know, when I heard someone talk about a watch, and I thought, you know, that's made complete sense to me. And when I looked into it, like you said, absolutely outperform the stock market as far as holding value or having your value grow. It's much better than just having Federal Reserve notes in a digital account somewhere. Like you talked about with me earlier, having your money, your savings be active as opposed to being dead and stagnant in the soil. Like don't bury your money, put your money into circulation, put it into flow so we can have that energy that's give and take. And that's when you're going to get the give. You know, it's going to come your way.
Yeah. The only time I really keep, you know, a lot of cash on me is for opportunity purposes. Like that's really the only time I think you should have cash on you is if it's for an opportunity or something you're willing to get into. But other than that, you know, I mean, if you have a boatload of cash, it's super easy to get complacent. Like for most people, especially like listen to this anywhere in the world, if I wrote them a check for $200,000, like they probably wouldn't work the next day, right? Like they probably wouldn't. Versus yeah, exactly. So it's like versus if they didn't have any money in their account, they want to eat tomorrow, you got to work. That's a completely different mindset. It puts financial pressure on yourself and it realizes like, hey, dude, I just can't sit inside. I got to go eat what I kill. It's completely different. So that's one thing I always like is I never carry like an abundance of cash in my bank account.
You will I kill. I remember hearing that before too, but that's also like Oregon Trail when you were a kid in school. I'm not sure if they had that when you were in school.
I don't think so. No, we didn't have that.
It's weird because it just got re-released as a brand new game on the Nintendo Switch. So it's like being recycled, but I think it's part of that 80s, everything from the 80s is hot now. So 8-bit gaming.
It's all cyclical. Just like everything else.
Cool. Well, Nate, I really appreciate everything you've shared so far tonight. I think you've shared a lot of value. There's a lot to be written down and thought about what you're saying. I'm actually thinking about cutting some of these clips out to really kind of stand out and grab attention so that people will come and watch the entire interview and hear what you've got to say. Is there anything you want to share in closing?
I would say just do what you love in this world. Honestly, just be happy. Happiness is literally, it's priceless. Like you can't pay enough for it. Same with like peace of mind. So figure out what makes you happy in this world. Because for some people, it's money. For me, it's necessarily not money. It's what money brings, right? And figure that out and pursue it. Realize that, anything you want in this world that has a price outside of the monetary value, and you need to look in the mirror and decide if you're willing to pay it or not.
That's awesome. That actually reminds me of one other thing we discussed. It was investments. We talked about crypto. We talked about watches, gold, silver, platinum. Do you think there's anything more valuable than those things? And what do you think that might be?
100%. So in terms of the best investment you could make, it's hands down in yourself, right? If you go upstairs in my room at my parents' house, there's a little like note card on my parents' on my mirror, and it says $1 million before I'm 30. How investing? What will I sacrifice my time and every single penny? That's originally how I thought I was going to make a bunch of money, right? And then I realized you can't control the price of Bitcoin. I can't control the price of Tesla. What I can control is myself. So if you were to take the money you would have put elsewhere and just put it into yourself, growing your own business, getting better, personal development, buying a plane ticket to visit a mentor, going on a course, for instance, literally anything else, you will go from 0 to 100K exponentially quicker than you ever will in any other investment. Because the problem with microwavable success is, let's say you make $1 million, right? You got lucky on a crypto play, right? That is dangerous because now you have $1 million and none of the skills to manage that. That's money soon seen gone. Exactly. Right? Exactly. Versus if you put in the time necessary to build the necessary skills, you know how to manage that money better than anyone.
Yeah.
It's way more important. So always invest in yourself. It's one thing that's so overlooked. And I feel like some people see that as like the college degree thing. And for some people that's true, right? It's a form of investing in yourself. But for most people, like for me at this point, it's, investing in sales courses, it's investing in coaching. It's stuff like that. And to me, that has an exponential return that is literally uncomparable to anything that, Bitcoin or stocks or real estate, even watches can bring me. Because the problem is like, for me, I used to invest like marginal amount of money into, crypto. Like, let's say I invest $400 and I 10X, right? And that becomes $4,000. That's really not life-changing. You know what I mean? That's really not like, it's not life-changing money, right? And I mean, let's say you 100X, like you turn it to 40,000, like that's good money. No one's going to complain about it, but that's not like, it's not going to change your life really. Nope. Right? Versus if you invest in the necessary skills, if you were to go from making 50,000 a year to 250,000, that's going to change your life. Therefore, it's by far, it's the best investment in the world. Always invest in yourself before you invest in everything else. Always.
Right on. I couldn't agree more with how you worded that. And I could agree more with almost everything you've said tonight. And I'm really thankful that I got this opportunity to speak to you, that our listeners got a chance to hear from you. Are you open to anyone contacting you? Is there a way for people to reach out to you?
Of course. I would say honestly, the best way to reach me would probably be like Instagram. It's just Nate X Morrissey. I can send it over to you as well, but I think that's the best way to contact me.
Cool.
I go through all my DMs.
I'll put it on the screen and I'll have some descriptions below, and that'd be a good way, because you mentioned earlier how big it could be just sending out that first DM and putting it out there. And it's, for you to even make that offer is a big deal, because now you may get some responses. I don't know, maybe not getting a response till August, who knows? Yeah. Because this is going to live forever. We're going to put this out there and see if, people get caught and take the time to hear what you've got to say and receive the benefit of the knowledge you're sharing tonight. I want to thank you again for your time, which I value. And Nate, thanks again for joining us on the podcast.
No, I appreciate it. It's been awesome. I'm excited. Really excited.
Life is amazing when you learn new skills and improve your life. Autonomy is a 12-week course and growing community that delivers such skills. And better, it equips you to teach yourself any new skill in an environment of others doing the same and helping each other win. Imagine how much that could improve your life. I'm a graduate of Autonomy, and I want others to know the value I have experienced. If this sounds like something you want, sign up for the obstacle course. The link is in the description. It's the gateway to assess your skills and help you find the best solutions.